Good morning or afternoon, depending where you guys are. Me showing up to the chat never seems to fail. I swear. Okay, let's see. Twitter. What? Are you secretly telling us that you're getting engaged? Do you honestly think if I got engaged, that's the kind of dress I would wear? Like, what? That is what I would wear? Good morning. That person has clearly never been to a Lebanese wedding. Do you guys see the pho that I made yesterday? I was pretty proud of myself. Look at this. But then I had the worst stomach ache because I ate that before bed. And I put way too much hot sauce. So my stomach was just hurting so much. Yeah, I don't know. It keeps raining. Like one day it's cold, one day it's hot. I feel like the constant weather change is just making me sick. Okay, wait for a few more viewers here and then we'll get into this. Netflix. Okay, I wanted to show you. Good Game. Are you on the live? I don't know what your name is in here. I'm not sure if you're listening. Thank you. I didn't end up getting that dress. I got a different dress. It kind of looked weird on. Where's my phone? Is there only 11 viewers here, guys, or is it just glitching on my side? Can't really see. So why does it always say that? Mine always glitches out. That's what I ended up getting instead. Good Game, are you on the live? I was gonna show you Netflix. It's moving in those exact increments, and look, so I measured it from the actual open. Do you see this? Like where they actually opened it, and look at where this thing stalled. Isn't that insane? So I would say that all it has to do is probably come back and take out this range here, like 4.4. It seems like there's a lot of overhead around like 4.4, 4.5, even though our calculated spots are 12.47, 12.39. I thought it was pretty cool. And the way that it held like this bottom channel down here, like this whole range, like basically within here, was really nice too. Like they held off right on these spots because we wanted it to basically avoid going back to this yellow box, because then that would mean that it would come back to this range. So this was a really clean trade on this. This was almost perfect actually, because now this is setting up for that next range, which I think we said was 1290, 1289, right, on Netflix. And today's the flip date on it too. So I'll leave this like this because that's measured from the real-time open, right now. Like this right here is measured from real-time open, but from like the actual session open, are you watching? From like the actual session open, I would say it probably still has room for like that, what is that? 12.4596, 12.4596. Let me make sure that this is right though, hold on. 12.0989, 89, 12.0989. This would be probably a little bit higher then. Oops. 12.46. That's probably max range on that one. Let me just unadjust this though so that I can just mark it on there. What's that level? 12.4605. Okay. Set some alerts. Okay, ES. ES came back. We took a long down here. I love how every one of you guys followed my long trade. Like after complaining all morning how choppy this was. They still held the, like, so this makes sense to me because they stalled our 9496 spot, okay, back here. And yeah, we can talk about Bitcoin in a second. Bitcoin hit our targets. It had a big flip date today too. I think it flipped down. Okay, so this stalled 6494.5 and then made a bit of a turnaround, but I didn't really care for where they opened us today on ES. So where did they open? I think it was like 64, 67, 50 or something like that in real time, which isn't bad, but it's not, that's definitely not ideal. Like we're still opening in core ranges versus opening in the zone, and they couldn't quite close us in the zone area yesterday either. Like I did notice that. They ended up stalling a little bit overnight. They did a good job though of sustaining those areas that I mentioned, like 7.6, 7.7, 7.8. So they did a decent job in sustainment. They didn't do a great job in retracements. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you guys? So like they did a pretty good job holding this area here yesterday like we wanted. They did not do a good job in retracing this area here like we wanted. So this would have helped offset some of that risk. Okay, you probably would have seen as big of a reversal like this had they actually retraced. So I wasn't really surprised to see them drop it like that for the report this morning. They came back, and we did say that wider support range for the week was what? Holding the means. Do we want to go back to the channel at this point in the week? This is, that's max downside, right? Ideally, we wanted to stay above here, right? This was kind of the goal for the day before. So it's kind of like they just expanded that range that we had from the day before, where like they could have taken to like the mid means, bottom of the means. I don't have all these marked, but kind of like this 5.2, 5.3 area here. So they still held the means, which still gives it a chance to come back and do what? What does that give this a chance to come back and do? It's not ideal, but it makes sense based on where they opened, where they closed. Had they broken this area, it would have been a 44-point break. Okay, so they couldn't quite get to 9.4 or 9.6, sorry. And even based on where they opened the session, let me just show you guys, like the actual session open. It's not bad. It's not great. Like this is a perfect example of like a day that could be back and forth, whiplash and engulf. Okay, so an 8.4, an 8.5 open close, like that's not bad, but what did we prefer? So that's still upper core, so it's still progress because it's not like, it's not 6.8, it's not 7.8, it's not 7.6. It's still an upper core range, but what did we prefer? What would have helped us really mitigate some of that risk from yesterday? And until they break, and this is actually really cool too, because the way that they did this is that they made it so stalling 9-6 is also stalling a 12-point break from close. Isn't that crazy? How many points do you normally have to break to progress? Usually. At a minimum. No, we would have preferred to have closed at 6.488, 6.490. That would have helped mitigate some of that risk. So they closed it a tiny bit lower. How many points, guys, do you usually have to move to get progressive price action? What's your first interval or increment that you typically have to move to get progressive price action? And this linked really, really well with our actual areas. How many points? I'm giving you the answer on the screen, but how many points do you normally have to use or move? Usually 12, 13, right? So they stalled around 11.25, 11.5. So they were just a bit shy. That 9.6, 9.7 break would have given us much more progressive price action. Does that make sense? And these were our calculated ranges from the week anyway. And like I said earlier, had they tested this overnight, this would have been helpful in terms of mitigating some of that risk back to the means. Even our upper overhead here from yesterday, we wanted closer to 0350, 04. I feel like all of these reductions in range that we've been getting, like this right here, it's about 1.5 to 2 points, whatever that range is, 1.75. Do you see what I'm saying? That seems to be the theme. Like that's the offset there. Do you see it? Like the slight reductions. Do you see that? There's also the offset in where they closed, because I would have probably preferred at least around like 8.6, 8.7, 8.8. I think that yesterday or today they closed at 8.5, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So we would have had slightly better odds if we had a bit of a higher close above the zone, or as close to the zone as possible. Not that this is like a terrible spot, but this makes price action what? What does this do to price action? An 8.4, 8.5 open close. A 9.5, 9.4 stall versus 9.6, 9.7. 0.02 stall versus 0.3, 0.4. What does this do to price action? Even here, a 6.5, 6.6 hold versus 6.8, 6.9, 70. Right? All of these little offsets, I can see them. Like they make sense because we probably would have wanted to hold closer to here. What does this do to price action? Not delays. Well, technically delayed, but that's not really from that. That could be if they want to pin price for Friday, they'll delay. What does that do to price action though? Yeah, I would say a slight increase in volatility, but it makes it less constructive, right? Your open and close almost always determines the kind of PA that you'll get. And if you get really good at understanding the increments that you should be opening and closing at, then you'll have a better idea. I knew before we even started today's session that this is the kind of price action we'd get. Like I could just tell. But I also knew that we had an odd of still getting to the zone, like 8.8, retesting 9.6. It's just, it might take a while. So that's where like the delay could come in. And they could be doing that. Why? Why do you guys think that is? Why would they bring this all the way back to 50s just to bring it back to the 90s on Thursday, the 14th? Why would they do that? also don't know if you guys noticed this, but look at where they stalled in range yesterday. Open to high ratios, we hit exactly 34 points. So that was super impressive. And it also makes sense why they likely didn't trigger 03 because they had stalled that range, right? Whereas from like a high range, had they broken here, then we could have actually hit 04. Do you see that? Why do you guys think that they might be doing this type of PA? Market's actually working in like 44-point intervals right now, so this is another reason why I feel like they might still get us to that 65, 10, 11, 08 spots once we can finally clear 97, 02 properly. Yeah, like, so these were very close to weekly targets, right? What was the ideal weekly target? What area had the highest odds in terms of range for the week? So from highs to lows right now, we're almost hitting that 44-point metric. Do you see this? Like, we're not that far off. Could this technically be considered enough to be a max range from a high to low ratio if they end up stalling off 44 points, let's say? That would be our 9.6, 9.7 spot. That's also the 12, 13-point break from open. Okay? What do you guys think? So same thing. This is the 12, 13-point break from open. It's also a 44-point break. Does breaking so hold on. The question is, what's required for us to break this high? What do we need to do? We don't actually have to do that much. What do we have to do to break that high and potentially get 65.10 on the week still? Maybe 20, who knows? What were our weekly targets? Where's the Substack? Upper channel holds, this is from previous week, gives us that odd of getting to this box range here, okay? It's pretty accurate. This is from 2 weeks ago. And if you look at these open closing ratios, like that's exactly where they kept closing this. Look at the range, 69, 60, 73. Once you break that area, it's going to get you to that 6,500, 6,503. What do we have to do to get 6,503, 6,508, 6,510? Those were the targets for the week. Okay? What do we have to do? What's all that's required? You don't really have to do much. This is all that's required. And I would bet money it's probably going to be like a 17-point break and a 22-point break from yesterday's close or today's open would give us these ranges here with the slight 1.75 offset, because you know how I said we closed a little bit lower than I wanted? That makes sense that they'd bring it closer to 07, 06, right? Versus like 08, 10, because we're 1.5, 1.75 shy. What's all that's required to still potentially get these ranges this week? Or to come back and take out this high. You don't really need to do much. What do you have to do to take this out? To potentially get these max ranges for the week. Guys, I have 4 open positions, so if I'm gonna stream, you guys better participate. Yeah, but so sustainment makes sense, like you do have to sustain. What's the only condition required? Like sustainment we understand, right? It's not so much about sustainment. You guys are missing the point. What did we fail to do last night? It's not that we failed to sustain last night. We failed to do what? Which increased volatility, which decreased odds. This was just resetting it. Okay, let me shut off my screen so you guys can look in that. All you have to do is take out 9697. That's it. That's all you have to do. There's no other condition left for the week. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to take out that high to get to 040. All you have to do is take out 9697. Does that make sense? Had they done that last night, like, and met that condition that we had last night, they probably would have already triggered 07, 06, whatever, 04. How does that not make sense? You break your intervals. Kind of like getting into like university. You don't have to have the best grades to get in. You just have to have the passing mark. That's it. You just have to pass that mark and that's all you need. That's how the market works. Because you break that, guess what? You break 34 points, you break 44 points, you break 12 to 13 points. From open, close, high, low. Does that make sense? And that's what starts setting you up for the intervals that kind of are the ranges we're working with, which is like 44, 22. Do you get that concept? I turned it off on purpose because there's no point in sharing it if the answer's on the screen and no one can get it right. It kind of defeats the whole purpose. What's the point of that if I'm pointing it out and no one can grasp this? Like this would be a 44-point break, taking out 9796. This would be a 12-point break. This would be a 13-point break. We already hit 34 points. Do you get what I'm saying? They already met 34 points yesterday. They already did that. Like they already hit that full range from open to highs. Okay? From lows to highs, they didn't. They stalled 41. That's the offset. That's that 1.752 points that we're missing. That's what could get you 64 or 6504. Do you get what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to go lower to do what? And this is a pretty common theme. It just depends on how low you actually go, though. They already also hit 132 to 133 points here, if you guys were paying attention. Off the Friday range. Do you see this? 132 is probably 6504. Off that 3-bar. We're working with 128 to 132 point intervals. What's 128, 132 points? Half of what? 256. We're working with 256 from these range dates here. Do you see how they're stalling? 253. 251. Do you see this? If they break, this will meet our weekly ranges. That's aligned with 6507.25. Based on what we just calculated, that is what this 44-point break would be. Right? If they come back all the way through, break this area here, they give us a 33, 34-point break here. We still have some slight odds of getting the full range here. We said a 22-point break, I think, was like 07, 06. Off today's open, I think it was 06, 07. Where did they open today? 85. Do you see the confluence here? That's also a 256-point break, you guys. And it's a break of 132 points from Friday's close or open, from like this formation here. From these ranges here off the actual lows from the first, they've already kind of broken that. From open close, they haven't. So we still have some range that we could work with. It's kind of like within the neutral box. That's where like the 12, 65, 10, 12 areas come into play. So do you see why those are the max ranges for the week? Why those were the weekly targets? If you don't see that, then that's a huge issue. Because there's no point in preparing you guys for us to hit 65, 04, 07, 08 if you guys don't even understand the concept of us doing that. And what they might want to be doing here. So there's two things that they might want to be doing here, especially on Thursday. It's Thursday. We're just passing mid-session. They're slightly failing 64.88, 64.90. Don't forget 64.90. Talking to mostly people that read the reports or in the Discord, have traded with me for years, and then, I don't know. Okay, so go back here for a sec. $64.90, $64.89. Are those important price points? Are these important spots? Let's start there for a second. Are these important spots? Our weekly open was 642275. Yes. Why is it an important spot? If you don't know why it's an important spot, that's where you guys should restart. Why is that important? Why is this area here important? 66 points off weekly close, weekly open. Okay? That's a starter. Okay? You can probably work with 66 to 68 points. Okay, so this is a very huge spot. Correct? We're not going to progress this afternoon unless they do what? What's the first thing required for them to do? That level I think is 648975 or 648875. I'm pretty sure this is off of yesterday's real-time open. Pretty sure that real-time open was 2375 or something like that. Anyway, this area here is very important, correct? This is a huge, huge, huge spot. Yes? Are you guys listening? To make sure that you all are on the same page. If they give 68-point intervals, which is half of 34, okay? Half of 34, let's do this off the weekly open. Half of 34 would be like right here. This is off weekly open. Do you guys see the overhead? Do you see where they stalled last night? Do you see this? This little slight stall right here. We actually had those 1-point offsets all day yesterday. So they did slightly break above. It's not that they didn't. Which is likely why they held above the means, which is 5152. Do you see that? The bottom of the means is usually around 5152. Is everyone on board with this? This is the offset. They broke above by a point, they held above by 1 point. Let me know if you guys understand this concept. Okay, they came back, they brought this higher, they tested 9.4. They're still a little bit beneath this 9.6 spot though. Okay. And now they're hitting exactly 66 to 68 points from weekly close, weekly open, which happens to align with our zone entry, which is 6488, 6490. It's not a coincidence, right? And hence, if we would have closed above, like, even if we had closed above, I would say 8675 yesterday, that would have also helped us progress even a tiny, tiny bit, because that could have given us that extra point that we needed here, right? Or even like right here. But do you see what they're doing? It's not that this is necessarily failing, it's that it's like, it's just slightly meeting the conditions, because it did, but not the full condition. Like, they're a little bit shy right here, just like they're a little bit shy right here. Does that make sense? Why are they doing that? That's intentional, by the way. Why are they trading it like this? Why would they be trading it like that? It's 2 p.m. on Thursday. We've got 1 day left in the week. Why are they trading it like this? Also, monthly options start trading this week. It's not to keep it in range. Let's assume that this is the max range for the week. Let's just make an assumption here. This is the max range left for the week. Let's just say that. 16, 17 points. 17 points is half of what? What's that half of? Why would they might want to do that? If they break this range, that's where we could get that really nice Friday, right? And we could get our core areas like 2, 4. I feel like that's a decreased odd now since they broke down to the means. Like that extra 17 points, I think got recycled down, unfortunately, because I feel like if they would have held 7-1, does that make sense? Like, I feel like this extra 17 points, probably not. Like, we did have odds this week to expand to core areas, but I think because they recycled range down to 5-2, 5-3, 5-4, instead of holding 70, 71, 72 like we wanted, like this area here, does that make sense? I feel like it's less of an odd because they decreased range down here, that we might get that, because this would have been our expansion scenario that we talked about this week to the 20s, which is a core to core move. How much points are usually in a core to core move? How many points do you normally get from core to core? Yeah, usually 50 to 55. So I would say that, and it's kind of cool that if they break this area here, that would also be a 34-point break from these calculated spots from weekly open. So it's not a coincidence. And that a 17-point break is exactly at 65.07, which is also a 256-point break. It's insane that how these are all so aligned. So, okay, this is what I think was reduced. Why, if they are able to meet these price points today, do you guys think this could still be an odd? Even with the recycled downside range. This would basically be like a 34, 33 point move off open, getting to our 60, because these were targets on the report, 65, 19, 20. These were still targets on the report, and it makes sense off 85, 84, because that's 34 points from where they opened and closed here, okay? This isn't exact, but you guys get the idea, okay? Would we still have an odd of that happening? They still closed at upper core. It's not like it's a bad spot. 8.5 isn't bad. It's just not the most ideal for like the most constructive price action. Does that make sense? Can you still get there to your end goal even with that kind of open close? You can, it's just not as constructive. The price action is going to be a pain in the ass. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's not that you don't have odds of still getting this area here. It's just that the way that they made this, the price action it's going to be a lot trickier. And sideways and delayed and whatever else you want to look at it. Do we still have odds of getting 0506? What do you guys think? They met 8889 right at midpoint of session at 1:30. So I think because they tested 9495, I think because they held close to here and it's within like that downside range, I think because they offset this back here, I think because they actually still took out 8891, it would have been bad overnight if they didn't test 9596 but also didn't even test 8889. Does that make sense? So we still have an odd of getting to 64.96.97 today. That's the minimum condition, and a slight probability of getting to 65.04.06.07. Does that make sense? And that's going to leave this 19, 20, 24 price target or extended range in play for the week. That's part of the reason why I said I would probably do Monday's expiration or Friday. And the increments make sense too, because they're right off 16, 17 points, 34 points, 44 points. And that would end up being like a core-to-core break. This has slightly reduced odds, but it's possible if they meet that condition today. Let's say they don't get to this area today, and they keep it closer to like 88, 89, 93, 94, whatever. They just give us a better pin. Could it just be a better pinnable session today? And a reset for tomorrow? These are the only odds we have left for the week. And we're lucky because we already knew what our max ranges were before the week even started. Not many people had max ranges prepared before the week started. Yes, so that would leave us with very limited range to work with over an entire period of 24 hours. Does that make sense? Like if you only have that many points left to work with for 24 hours, like that's not very many points. Do you guys agree? Do you see the difference? Like where they open and close, of course they would stall 01, 02, right? That's why they closed there, by the way. That's because that was 17 points beneath highs. That's why they stalled 02. That's why they closed 8.5. Do you understand that concept? They hit 34-point range yesterday. They reversed back and closed 17-point range at 6.485. That's the main reason. Had they actually triggered 04 yesterday, then we probably would have had a better odd of closing at 8.8, which would have been the 66, 68-point range from weekly open. Does that make sense? This area here is also linked to weekly open. Do you grasp that concept? Like it's also a direct link to like this weekly opening range. And we said market probably is going to move within like an 86, 88 point interval, right? Had we triggered closer to this, we probably would have had the 65.10 odds yesterday. So, okay, let's focus now a bit because it's getting pretty close to 220, 230. Those are usually very critical points in the session. Let me just double check some things here. There's still some pretty nasty structures setting up that they definitely have to try to retract. Look at like just over 2 hours, 126 minutes. That's a really nice time frame, especially with an odd for getting a nice 3-bar continuation here, but there's a lot of pressure. And they're definitely keeping it stuck. We are stuck on an inside bar that runs till past 4 on some frames here that are linked with highs, which could be an issue if they decide to keep it stuck until then. And we have some odds opening up here right now. Pretty important times coming in at like 12 or 218, 219, 224. 232 is very important. And then a lot of importance around 3. So I would imagine that there would be some volatility coming in here just before these marks here. They have odds of keeping us stuck all afternoon today too, especially if they don't clear during this point in time. And it would make sense too, because that would be them basically trying to keep us pinnable for the afternoon, which they might want to do if they wanted to do what? I was trying to ask that earlier, but no one seemed to know how to answer that. Pin the close, yeah, and pin Friday's close, right? If they want to limit range and pin Friday's close, which is monthly options expiration too, then they might just keep us stuck. If they want to be generous, they'll give us some range breaks today and expansions tomorrow. So far, they're reducing this back to 7876 here, and that's 7975. I deleted the 81 spot, but that was really important from yesterday. And they're doing this just ahead of this 218, 219. So they do have an odd to try retracting this back in the next like 2-3 minutes. Yeah, me too. What are they saying right now? This guy's not a real person. Like what? So if they're going to increase volatility, it's definitely going to be during this period here. I would say that if they could sustain those ideal ranges that we had preferred to sustain earlier, like closer to like the areas marked in green, then we have a decent odd of sustaining and retracing back up. If they fail these ranges, especially during this point in time, then that's when we could look for those those retests down here. I would prefer that they hold though. I'm just going to mark the bottom of the means down here. So they have an odd to negate and retrace in the next 2 minutes here. We would need a really aggressive stick back up though, especially off 7879. Like they'd have to kind of try bringing it back like this. What do you guys think? You think that they hold the line here? Well, there's odds for like 424, right? So yeah, they could definitely keep it stuck if they wanted to all afternoon, especially in real time, and stay within those ranges. But I still think that we could get a better constructive close. That would at least be helpful. Try to vote on that quickly though, because this would be the point that they can try to negate some of this. I guess they'd have to probably retract those opening ranges, whatever they were. What was yesterday's close? 8, 4. Thank you so much, Smos. You don't have to do that. You do that all the time. You're the best. Sorry. I know Dougie's probably gonna yell at. No, don't be sorry. You're the best. I just feel bad. Dougie's probably gonna tell me. Pin that. So they're doing this. That's not bad. I would say that the hold of 7-8 at 8-17, 18, and then this retracement here at 19 is pretty good. 19 is the calculated mark to see if they can try getting this back over. I would have preferred 8-4, so this is still a little bit shy. You'd have to get follow through on this stick to avoid that volatility. 2-4 is a really, really, really important time of day right here to try avoiding like this continued downside risk. So this was a little bit reduced, it seems like. This is the box range to try basically protecting this from having some downside. What did you guys vote for? Oh, majority voted no. that they're not going to hold the line, then they'll probably for sure hold the line. So I'd say that there would be some pressure around 2-3 for sure, like ahead of 2-4. So when do you think would be the earliest period that they can come back? Because you guys are forgetting, could they still take out 9-4, 9-5 today and maybe give us an odd of like this 0-2 retest? The odds are not that high, but they're still there. They're not really high odds though. I was thinking it would be more pinnable. What do you guys think? And a lot of this is going to be based on what they do during this period here. Like if they can get it back over 8-4, 8-5. And then by that 2:30, 2:32 period, if they can try getting back to the 66-point breaks off weekly open, which is this area here. So we'll see. I just feel like they did too much work and progressive work this week to just give it all back the day before end of week. Do you know what I mean? Like they brought us to 64.88, they brought us to 64.96, they brought us to 65.02. It would just really suck if they took it all back down. It wouldn't really make much sense for pinning the week. And I feel like that's partially why they're being defensive even with the bad data that we had this morning. This will be the breaking point though for sure, is during this time period here in terms of what they're going to do. So far, to me, because they held 7-8 but they stalled 8-4, this looks like pinnable price action to me, which sucks because you don't really get breaks on either end, but is better for follow through price action the following day or the day after. All right, let's see here. How many think that they'll trigger that 8-4, 8-5 for our 2-4? Should just do another 2:24 p.m. 6-4, 8-5 trigger. Let's set this to a minute. They're doing it at 2-3. That's really good for price action. 64.84 being triggered here off that 2-3 ahead of 2-4. This is helping odds for that 2:24 turnaround and reducing risk during this period here, because the thoughts were if they can reduce risk during this period here, they could try retesting during this period here. Does that make sense? And doing this during this period is going to give us the best odds of retesting high of day and avoid us staying stuck, because we have odds unfortunately to stay stuck today until after the close, because these odds are not till like 4:03, 4:24, which is after the bell, unfortunately. This was the most important period during today's real-time session to avoid us from staying stuck or pinnable. What do you guys vote there? No? Majority is voting no? Okay. They tagged 8475. 30 seconds left on this interval here. We're going to watch the follow-through stick. What? I have no idea what you're talking about, Bradley. Like overall structure? So I would write down that condition that 224 retracted for 8.4, which was yesterday's close, but couldn't get past that session open of 8.5. So to me, this is still implying pinnable price action. Pinnable price action is a lot of back and forth, right? Where you meet one condition, fail a second, you meet one, you fail a second, you retrace up, you retrace down. They have that final window here during this period coming up. Usually 2:36, 38 are important times of the day in general. They're not really relative today, but we can still watch around that point just to see what they end up doing. Oh, I wanted to mention the banks because I did like the look of Citi, but WFC had a pretty decent day today. But Citi is kind of making a nice turnaround. Can we keep these on watch? So start paying really close attention too, because usually when you start clearing properly, like this wasn't the best spot. This was a little bit better back here. These areas are the most ideal, so I'm thinking if they can start clearing properly off 7.6, 7.8, kind of like how they did off 6.8, 6.9, because this gave a decent odd for there. That's where they could have that odd of taking out that 89.50, 90 spot, but a lot of this is going to be relative to them retracing back in time. They're cutting it pretty close on time right now. Could you try shorts off 8.8, 8.9, 90 area if you wanted to? You could, but the issue is if price action doesn't become more constructive and this stays pinnable, then our ranges might start to be a little bit limited. These points in the day are supposed to give us an idea of that. So based on them retracing 8.4 but stalling 8.5, I can already tell this is pinnable price action. Based on them not really breaking down range or doing anything during this period, this looks like pinnable price action. We'll see if they have that reattempt here. We're going to watch that. I'm still going to watch the 236, 235 period just because it's generally important, along with 238. And I do want to see what they end up doing off that 3132 stick. 30 is not a mark. I just wanted to see how it reacted at 30, like ahead of this 3132. So this was the next window here for them to try retracting or breaking. Kind of like we're not really going to get any sort of constructive price action unless like one end of this breaks. Oh, also TLRY hit our target today. I don't know if you guys saw that. It hit exactly that 135 and they closed above. Okay, so I figured that this could easily make a turnaround as long as it holds that 109 to 110 area. I think we said 109 and 110 and 114. I don't remember exactly what I said. Where's that 114 go? Right, 114? Is that what we said? What was it? Yes, okay, if it holds this really good hold of 114. It's a pretty solid hold. Anyway, I want to just watch that closely. Right. Some slight reattempts here. Not really the best range, but this is, like I said, exactly what I would have expected based on the kind of price action that we're seeing here today. And where they open, where they closed, the day of the week it is, the kind of data we had this morning. Hopefully they at least give us a better pin today, if that's how they're going to trade this. Hopefully we can at least somewhat benefit from this. They had some odds just before 2 here to also try bringing it back. So I did make a note of this because they still did retract 8.5. They didn't get fully back to 8.7, 8.8, but they did get an 8.5 break at 5.9. So that was actually really good. Do you guys know what that means? Oh, it's okay. I just feel like a lot of people are going to get trapped this afternoon. That means that since they broke opening range at before 2, we have pretty decent odds. A lot of intervals for the 2 p.m. flips run through close. So that's telling me that they probably want to keep this above 85 into the last hour. There's a lot of confluence today at 3. 3's probably the most important time of day today, is this point here. And it would keep that in play, correct? I mean, so far they're holding 7.6, 7.8 pretty nicely. At least they tested 8.4 during this early period, and they're sustaining during this period here, which, I don't know, tells me, especially off 17, 18, because 18 was the flip. 17 is the minute ahead of the flip, so 17 would be the structural hold. Because if they wanted to break down structure, guys, if we had odds as early as 18, 19, they would have broken down structure at 17. Does that make sense? And this would have probably taken out 7.4. Like this 2.75 range. Do you see what I'm saying? They would have come back and broken this area here of 7.6. And then it would have had much higher odds of getting a continued downside reversal. Why is 7.6 range not marked here? Like close to this area here. And you would have seen this kind of price action continue down. So you would have seen a retest of like 6.8. Does that make sense, guys? This range right here is what they could have had reduced. It was about 6 points, which I bet would have taken us back to retest this 7.1, 7.8 area, or 6.8 area, 6.9 area, which would have looked a little bit riskier and put us at, it could have still been a slightly higher low than this range here, but really reduced odds of getting pins in this area here. Does this make sense to you guys? Based on this, this is basically the range that they saved, or the risk that they reduced based on how much overall range we had during this time period here, this interval. And that could have allowed for a slightly higher low, but then choppier price action closer to like the 70s, which the 70s don't really do anything for us at this point. And them just kind of keeping it sideways right here is, it's just helping us keep odds in play. So slightly higher structures, because we still want to see if they can try breaking at 3. Do we have any catalysts this afternoon? Oh, no problem. This is your first month, really? Why do I feel like you've been here for a long time? Oh, I'm glad you guys are learning. That's really important. I hope it obviously helps you guys make money. What's really stood out to you the most, I guess, being here for a month? Because I understand that my way of trading is obviously not standard. So I would say they probably need to test 8.5 before 3. Because if they were able to meet 8.5 break ahead of 2, what do you guys think would have to be the condition ahead of 3? Ideally. This would help us a lot this afternoon. I'm gonna make coffee and get some water, and I'll let you guys think about your afternoon conditions. So the next point of odds we had was close to like 247, 248. The midpoints here would be around 242, 243, I think. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. Let me know what you guys think the conditions would be. I know what they are. Just let me know what it would have to be. There's 2 conditions that they probably need here. And it's nice that they held above 7.8 here, and now they're holding above 7.9 right here. So this is slightly progressive. And the slight progression right here, okay, of like 0.5, are you guys listening? This little 0.5 hold right here could be the 0.5 break that we needed back here to 8.5. Do you see this? Because remember how they couldn't get an 8.5 break right here? you remember that? Right there. I'll leave you guys with that and I'll be right back. I think these are some midpoints coming up here. So if they can do this at 40, 40 is usually an important time of day too. 238, 240, 236. Usually just ahead of 248 for some odds. So this is very good if they're breaking some range here. Ahead of this. Because it... if we can break this range here ahead of 248, then we have odds of getting a retest here by 248, which leaves us at an odd of getting what? Nice. Okay, I'll leave you guys with that, and then you guys come back and tell me, okay? So, do you see this? They're giving pretty good odds. The midpoint, I think, was 4243. So that's the earliest odd that I figured they could try breaking. 8.5. That's the midpoint. If they break the midpoint as early as this like if they break 8.5 as early as the midpoint at 4.344 or 4.243, they could definitely retest 8.889 before 48. So let me know what the odds would be then for 3 o'clock, and I'll be right back. Did they break, guys, at the midpoint? Hey? Did they break 8.5? don't care if it barely broke as long as it broke. Forgot my straw. I have to go back up. Okay, let's see. Okay, well, it doesn't... Guys, it doesn't matter if you bear... It's the fact that they did, so that's good. 4-3 midpoint broke 8-5. This can help our odds for 3. I still feel like odds are pushed till 3, just based on the the type of session it is. I would expect delays. What do you think would be the condition for 4-8? Nice. What do you guys think the condition would be for 4-8? Because I don't really think that this range reduction stick that they gave right here immediately told you that they're not going to push back at 4-8 because that already reduced us by 1.75. Does that make sense? Do you see this? Like, they could have if they didn't reduce like that. What do you think the condition would have to be for 4-8? And it's probably slower, so I would say it just needs to be above 8.5. Ideally take out this high though. So it could still get a really good stick, but I highly doubt that they can take out 8.8. Maybe 8.650, 8.7, like that area there. What was this high on this stick? 8.650? So that would be my condition, is see if they can at least... That's still a good stick. 2:48 p.m. taking out that 6486.50 at 6486.75. 6487. That's a, see, that's a constructive stick. So this keeps odds in play for the retest here for 3 o'clock. I was gonna say before I left, the conditions would be if they had tested 8.8, 8.9 as early as here, which odds weren't super high that they would do. What kind of odd would we have had for 3 p.m.? You guys. What kind of odd would that given us for 3 p.m.? We probably could have retested, I would say that 9.4, 9.5, right? Like as early as 259.3. And that would put an odd super high of getting the 6502, 6504, 6507 test. Do we still have an odd to get those areas today? What do you guys think? Notice how much better the price action got once they held 7.8. Do you see how much more constructive this was? Because this is where we prefer to have held yesterday night, right? Did they hold 7-8 last night? They went a little bit lower, right? This probably, not that 7-6, 7-7 is bad. 7-8, 7-9 would have been a little bit better. It's that 1.5, 1.75 range again, which is probably why they didn't get like 9-3, 9-4 tests. Whereas right here, we have a much better odd of actually getting a break this time, right? Of that 12-point range. Because look, this low right here is exactly 12 points. Do you see that? Do you guys see this? This low right here of 7,850, this is exactly 12 points, which is exactly back to that 66-point weekly break. Does that make sense? So that's why holding those areas overnight was ideal. I just want you guys to understand my overnight conditions, because this is why. Ideally, 7-8, okay? Because that gives us the best odds to get those expansions, to break that overhead, to break 9-4. So you can already see where they started reducing it back here. And then it had implications right here, caused this volatility here. It's not that this hold down here was bad, it's just it's not the best area. Like had they held 7-1 right here, maybe 6-8, they probably could have taken out, I don't know if they could have taken out 9-6, but they could have definitely taken out 99-1. Like they could have taken out the 90 weekly point break. Does that make sense? If they would have held a tiny bit higher right here. So this is a much more constructive break. And then the overall range in here is about 9 points, and this should probably be 13. Yeah, it is. That's crazy. The range difference between here and this support range here is exactly 13 points. Okay, so kind of give you an idea. That would be like those 9-1 breaks, and that's why they stalled these kind of areas overnight. Do you see this? Like this range in here. Instead, so this helps give us an increased odd of actually getting some better structural breaks this time. And if they actually were to break, you know, 13 or so points, do you see how you'd get 03? Do you guys see this? If you break above these ranges here, like the 90-50 spot, do you see how you'd get 04? I want you guys to see this. I know it's kind of messy, but do you see this? So this at a minimum would give you a retest of 0250. At least. So at a minimum, it gives you an odd of retesting that high. Does that make sense to you guys or no? Like the increments have to be the exact same, and they have to end up netting equal to offset each other. So these holds right here were implying 90, 91, 92, right? These types of holds right here imply that they could get some breaks of those areas and potentially a 650250, 6503 retest or break. So see that off this range here? That's why 13-point interval would be a little bit better. And that's only if they actually can clear in time. So I put a deadline for 3 o'clock just because I figured since they have odds of staying stuck all afternoon, you probably want to test sooner than later. This area, I would imagine, is going to be super heavy right here. What time is it? 54. So they're already reducing range. How many points is that? 3.5, 4. This is 5-4 is the midpoint here too, between 4-8 and 3 o'clock. Similar to this midpoint that we had here at 4-3. That's quite a lot of reduction though. That's probably the retest of 9-3. And 9-4. So what do you guys think the condition has to be for 2:59, 3 o'clock. This is going to give us an idea, by the way, if we're going to stay stuck this afternoon. Because if they want to keep us stuck and keep this pinnable, they can. What does keeping it pinnable mean? Pinnable just means to give us maybe a better odds of a better close. That would be like closing at 8.8, 8.9, 90, 9.1. Is that fun price action to trade? Not really. So these odds here at 3 are going to give us an idea on what it is that they want to do this afternoon. And whether or not they actually want to give 05 or 02 retest for an 05, 04, 07 break, or if they just want to keep this stalled in these higher 80s, lower 90s range. Do we still have an odd of retesting 9.4, 9.6, you think? And 9.7? The 17-point break here would be 9.550, which I think is slightly higher than where they stalled there. So far, they're still reducing range quite a bit during these time intervals here, though. That's kind of like what they did back here. And they normally do this when they know that there's limitations, because do you see what I mean? Like this would have been a 9.4 retest here. So still be a little bit cautious this afternoon. What do you guys think the minimum condition would have to be for 2:59, 3 o'clock? And this will give us an idea on the kind of price action over the next duration of the hours. So around 1:59, they did take it above 8.4, 8.5, but they stalled 8.7, 8.6. Okay. And 8.4, 8.5 were the closing and opening points for the session. So what do you think the minimum condition would have to be for 2:59? Three is also the most important flip today, this afternoon. Because this is going to give us an idea of what they might want to do for the final hour into the close. Minimum condition. No. Minimum condition would be what you think? What's the minimum condition here? It's right in front of your face, you guys. What's the minimum condition here? What's the minimum condition? It's not what we want. What's the minimum condition to at least keep this intact for the last hour? You want at least 8.4, 8.5, okay? At least, so that we have a slightly better odd of, even if they're going to keep us stuck this afternoon, of not fully breaking down and maybe getting a slightly better pin, okay? Do you see how they're defending final seconds here? Do you guys see that? Final, like, 15 seconds, they did their best to try breaking 8.5, okay? They sustained 8.4, they broke 8.5. It's kind of like... So 8.450, that's not bad. It's okay. Does this keep odds pinnable though, you think? Based on this type of range, like them stalling here, bringing it back down to here, closing at the minimum interval. Yes, I would say that this is still keeping this extremely pinnable for end of session today. We'll see if 3 o'clock can get that turnaround, maybe above whatever that range was there of like 8.6, I think, or 8.675. So it's being a little bit defensive. Is your follow through stick important? What do you guys think? Is your follow through stick important? Yeah, it is. Like usually your follow through stick has to show some sort of relative strength or weakness, like depending on what the trade setup is. So I would look to see if this 301 can test this 8775, 8750 area, because this would kind of be like resetting odds. They meet the minimum condition just ahead and they break just after. So back in here, 2 o'clock, do you see how they stalled? Okay, so technically this would be progressive price action. Does that make sense? This is still progressive. Even though they didn't quite close higher before 3, they're breaking slightly higher just after 3. So it could imply that they could break a little bit higher during this period. 8.7 tagged on that 01 stick. There were odds to retest around 0506, by the way, which we'll watch for, because there's some odds at 312, and I figured we could probably watch the median points here. And our midpoints have been pretty accurate, right? Like this here, these have been pretty accurate. So we'll see. I am streaming on YouTube as well, by the way. Figured I'll do both platforms. And sorry, I haven't really checked to see. Oh, there are a few people in there. Anyway, is this helping you guys like stay afloat? So knowing that they'll probably hold the line here, and I said it with confidence that they would. The majority of you voted no, because it seemed more, oh, thank you, Katie. It seemed more likely that 7-8, and 7-8 gives the best odds of this 6-6 break, so. You know what, too? We can also maybe watch, like, since they held around 17, 18, 16, the flips were 18, 19, they held at 16, 17. Maybe we can watch just after, like around 316, 17, 18. Even though odds were pretty late today. They were definitely during imbalance prints right here. And then most odds were after the bell. So this is what kind of sucks if they keep us a little bit stuck. So we'll have to see here. Yeah, for YouTube, I know I need to update all of that. I have so much stuff that I have to do. Viewers have been kind of short lately. They were really good last week and the week before, but not so great this week. I'm not sure why. Someone asked about crypto earlier. So crypto had a pretty massive flip date today. Okay, these were the ranges I was targeting: 124, 275, 123, 829. I wanted to see if they'd at least meet these conditions, and they did. So it did test them. And that would have given it some odds of getting range breaks to 126. They ended up stalling. As soon as they kind of came back beneath that 122, this is where the bigger range happened. You can kind of see it here. Do you see this big short back to these ranges down here? So they are holding the line though. Who was asking about this earlier? They are holding that 117. So like pay attention to these yellow box ranges here. if they can hold above this little box that I have here between like 117, 116, there's a decent odd they can get it right back to this box in here. That's probably where you'd want it to avoid continued volatility. It's kind of like a range of like between here and here, like almost like 3,500 points, which is probably the same range in where it stalled right here. Do you see what I mean? Because if you can get back here, then it gives you slight odds of getting right back in here. And if you want, you can put this up in here, because this is essentially where you'd want to come back to. And today's a really big flip date for Bitcoin. But it did meet the conditions though. So even though it had this massive reversal, it technically still met the condition because it met that price in time. Does that make sense? And it did it within like the first part of the session. Maybe see if they can negate, but I'd say it would have to get back at least to this box range overnight to avoid getting that continued volatility like right back down to here. And this would just reset it to come back and test these ranges down here. So it's at a pretty important spot here. But it is a very important flip date. It's kind of moving on like 3 to 4 and 7 point intervals. So maybe watch I would say if they can bring this back to this box here, they could try to negate tomorrow. So it could be like a multi-flip break, if that makes sense. Like for them to negate, they'd have to get this back to here. If they can get it back to here, it can come back to here. Does that make sense? But it does have to come back in that yellow box range. And it has to hold above this box range down here. That keeps it within its intervals. That puts a lot of pressure for this to get moving though from here back to here. Okay, let's go back to ES here real quick just because we've got some important points coming up here. They broke up at 07. Okay, so you can see they reduced range at 05, broke. You know what though? That seems to be let's make this the theme for the last hour, because it seems like there's a minute delay since they broke up at 301. Kind of like here, they broke this up, they delayed range or reduced it at 05, broke this up here at 07. So maybe we'll watch a minute post every one of these intervals here. I was asking earlier on the structure breakdown. Do you understand why structure didn't break down? And it's not that I'm like a long bias or something like that. It's just that there's too much pressure, and we already had a lot of progress made over this time period, especially to be met by August 12th through 14th. That I can't imagine them giving this up that quickly. Does that make sense? What's the very, very first thing that I said in the report this week? Where did they pin the 13th? Right at 8.5. Right? Those are those key points in time. Do they have odds of saving the range and negating on the 14th? I planned for this literally like 4 weeks ago, by the way. And like 4 months ago. These were my Q2 targets, hey? These were literally my Q2 targets that I planned back in January and back in March for these exact dates. So do you guys think I was prepared to see these spots trigger yesterday and today? Do you think it's a coincidence that they brought it to these ranges here at these points in time? Probably not, right? Do you see how today was a bit of a battle? Because today is basically trying to see if they're gonna hold the line, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Taking it back to the means implies what? What did I say we absolutely have to avoid now? What do we have to absolutely avoid now? Especially on these dates. What do we have to do? And I said this, I think, the day before yesterday. We must hold 5-2. Okay? We have to avoid the channel. Right? Where's the channel? Who here is new? Who in the chat is new here? And doesn't really grasp those concepts. Okay, this is the channel. We have to avoid this. Okay, we have to hold above here. Do you see what they did today? Do you think this is a coincidence? This is not a coincidence. For the 13th, 14th, 12th, this is insane. Right? Because, but do you see the battle that they had here today? Do you see this? And they just, PPI was just the catalyst they needed to bring it back to 5-2. Isn't that hilarious? Isn't that funny? Like that's all they needed. They just needed a catalyst for that. Really. Okay. Where does the means usually begin? 5-1. Right? 5-2. This little 2-point offset here is just what we need to get that 9-6, 9-7 break. Okay? So they basically held just above to give us a chance of breaking just above. We don't necessarily have to retest the high. What do we have to do for the 14th, especially since this is the day to retrace and negate, right? So they retraced and negated and fought for their lives on the 7th. Remember? And they brought it right back to where we needed, which was those 63.70s. Okay, because those were directly linked with this range here. Same thing here. We had to do our absolute best to avoid that channel. They could have tested the channel, but it wouldn't have given us very high odds of breaking. Does that make sense? Do you see the similarities here? Do you see this? This was last Monday's open, Sunday's open, and the close. 4-1, 3-9 are extremely calculated ranges. Do you see what they did? They then brought it to here, which is our 128-point interval. They then brought it to here, which is our 128-point interval. Do you see what they're doing? And holding that channel is so important, because what does the channel do? And what does the means imply? What is the means implying? Had they broken beneath 5-1, 5-2 this morning? Volatility, right? Channel also puts you back in a thinking box. Okay, so let me just maybe make a tiny diagram of the means. This is the means. This is the means. Okay. Do you see the volatility that occurred here? These are core areas. Core areas are good. They can really help us. Okay, they usually go between here to 8.5. What do they do back here? I don't know why that's doing that. Why is that glitching like that? Anyone else's trading view glitching like that? Anyway, you guys get the point, but okay, those are core areas here. Do you see the structural holds, the close? What did this give us an odd of doing? They broke 6-8 that time. That was just enough to keep this in play. They basically broke down, failed core ranges, brought it back to the mid channel, held, broke above the means, brought it back to core ranges. They held the means this time. This is defeating volatility. Do you see this? This right here, this 5-2 hold. This is going to help fight off that volatility. If they brought this back to the channel, especially ahead of the weekend, this could have triggered a lot of back and forth between these ranges here. Does that make sense? It'd kind of be like battling between a 256-point range is exactly what that is. So are these areas extremely pinnable for the 14th? Yes, they are. We said we're going to watch 16, 17, 18, right? Because they were in correlation with 16, 17, 18 right here. I figured there could be some odds that they'll retest right here. So let's see. 16 getting an 8,950 reclaim. This is basically the full hour interval of breaking 12 points, okay? Off our structural holds right here. What do you guys think? You think that they'll do it here? Should have done a poll. How many think that? Let's do a max range for real-time session. How many think that they can get a retest of here? How many think that they could actually get a break of 9-6 and 6-4? 9-7. How many think that? I think that's one of my first sells triggering. Let me just check. Yep. Nice. I bought those way earlier today. Okay, how many think that they could actually give us 65? $02 retest. How many think that they could give us 6504 to 6507? I'll put this pin or this up for 2 minutes. Do you guys see the timing on this? That's insane. 16, 17, 18 getting these structure breaks of 12 and 13 points. That's insane. Can someone document that? This is putting us at a very good odd this afternoon of getting a 9.5, 9.6 break. What do we have to break to give us an odd of retesting high of day? Do not get this wrong, because every single one of you got this wrong earlier. And I spent half an hour trying to explain it. What's the only requirement needed to actually get a retest of all-time highs? What do you have to break? Anyone try any SPX trades this last hour since odds were pretty decent? Timing of this is insane. These are the hour intervals that I was using off the 16, 17, 18, 19. This is the 19 mark. What do you have to do to break? What do you guys have to do? I sold half, but I still have half. I had that order set from earlier though, which is fine. What's the only requirement that you need to get a break? All you have to do is break 9.7. If you break 9.7, you have a very good odd of retesting 65.02. Do you guys see the range that they gave us here? 13, 12-point breaks to the exact spots. They actually closed above 12 points. From open close, exactly 12 points. That's insane. Off that hourly interval. Do you guys know how crazy that is? That's so calculated. That's insane. That is actually crazy. Look at this. That's exactly 13 points. What's the next range and intervals? What did I say that we have odds of using this afternoon? So right now they're stalling 15. That makes sense. What do we have odds of here? Is this putting us up for an expansion scenario tomorrow to hit our targets for the week? What do we have to do? We have odds of getting... Do you guys understand how this is the reset? This is basically the 7-8 hold. Okay? Which would give us the odds of testing 9-4, 9-6, 0-1, 0-5, whatever. Which now gives us an odds of getting 65, 16, 20, 24, 28. This is the reset here. This is the structural hold. Really nice trade, guys. Especially those that went long with me off the 6-5, 6-6 holds down here. This is where we entered. You could have done a good entry off 7-8 right here too, at 216, 220, 230. Is it a good idea to maybe take some off here? Yes. My sell had triggered a bit early back here. I forgot I set that earlier. But I left the other half. Those ones were same day expiration though, so those ones I wanted to be a bit more careful with. Nice. Good work. Those hourly intervals came really handy. The fact that we had this marked right here too is insane. Like right at this spot. I'm gonna start deleting some stuff though because this is getting super messy. What did you guys vote for the poll? How many of you guys caught the majority of this trade? So 02, 03. I think 02, 03 is a pretty good answer, but there has to be some conditions here. I still think that they could give us 04, 07, but only if I think they'd have to take out this area here, guys, by this point here, like during imbalance prints, like during this period. Could they keep this now stuck though if they want to limit range? So they tagged 9375, 9425, which is good. They at least got to our 94 spot. They haven't closed above 94 yet. So they stalled a 15-point range. So they broke 12 to 13 points, stalled 15. Okay, we're about 2 points shy. That's that 1.75 coming in again. There's two things that they could do here. If they want to expand range on the session, they'd probably take out this area here during this period here. If they want to limit range on the session, they'll probably trade this a little bit back and forth and delay. That's if they want to pin the close, right? Whereas if they come back around and break during this point here, we have a pretty decent odd of getting a retest of 02, maybe 05, 07, and then at that point we'll see where they could pin. If they did something like that, what would be the most ideal area to pin, you guys think? And it's just basically resetting odds from yesterday. What would be the most ideal area to pin if they took this to 02, 05 before 4 o'clock? What do you guys think? And they definitely don't have to do that. It's just this would be This is the highest case scenario. We'll talk about mid case and then the most probable. I think the most probable is that they save this and pin it, is my guess, but what do you guys think? Come on. Okay. What area? This would have been the ideal pinnable area yesterday. 8889 wasn't the ideal area, by the way. It was just the minimum. What was the ideal area to pin yesterday, based on them stalling 02? You guys realize if they had pinned us closer to 9496 yesterday. No, 9496 I think would have been fine. Even though it's bear zone, it was still a calculated range based on that. So I would have preferred that they would have pinned that yesterday. You guys realize if they would have pinned that, think about this. Look, 31.75 points from lows, from open, okay? This breakdown right here, if they would have broken the means, would have also been a 33, 34 point break. Do you know how insane that is? And how, do you guys even appreciate how calculated this is? I feel like sometimes you guys don't. This means hold was a 33, 34 point hold. FYI, okay? Could they have used that range for the upside if they had not done that, you think? Especially if they had pinned closer to, like, let's say minimum 8788. Okay? Let's say they gave us something close to that. I just want to show you guys what these intervals are. Okay, so here is 87, area 89. Okay, which is also 66 points from weekly open. Okay, so they could have used this range on upside. Could we have triggered 65.20s as early as today if they actually gave us these kinds of pins and didn't reverse back down? Could we have had the 20s today? I'm trying to show you guys what your odds would have been and why those targets that I sent you yesterday were definitely like a probability if they had better structural closing points, better overnight holds, better breaks. If they had closed us closer to here, I would bet money that this is the 43 point ratio. Yeah, it is. 9.7 would have been 44 points. We've been averaging around 43.5. Okay, so if they would have instead pinned closer to 9.6, 9.7, do you see how we could have had a 44 point break right here? Do you see this? What could that have gotten us? An odd. Potentially. And that's why I said maybe we have an odd of getting into the channel. Remember? We did have an odd. There's a lot of conditions that would have had to have been met for that to be the case, but that would have been that scenario. If they closed 9.6, based on the range that they gave, probably that. But this, it seems like they're averaging around 34 to 33 points, even just based on this closing range and this high, okay, this range right here and this low. Does that make sense? So I would say that 30-ish points, 34 points is probably the range that they're working with. So what odds do we have in play, especially if they reset conditions today? Try not to get this wrong. And these were my weekly targets anyway, so it does make sense. Which areas? And it would suffice my theory of a core to core week. Core to core. What did I say this week is probably going to be? A pretty good odd to get a core to core week this week. So what would our targets be if they give us those resets today? And that would be the 4th bar expansion tomorrow, FYI. If they actually did do something like this. What would that be? 4th bar would occur tomorrow. This would be based off these ranges. 62 of you guys. Don't make me call names. What would this be? Come on. If they meet these resets and conditions today. So far reducing range by like 6.5 points here. Means that there's tiny odds of these 6,500 retest. 6520s, you guys. Okay, hello, 6520, 6522, 28, 30. Exact areas I sent you guys. 6533. Hello, that's exactly 34 points off the resets. It makes sense. It's also what they recycled on downside. Everyone's on the same page? Do you see how this would still be super accurate for being our weekly targets on the week? Do they have odds of stalling the zone? I don't see them breaking the zone. I feel like that's not possible. Which makes sense since it's a core to core week. Op 6422. This is core to core. This. Okay. If they really want to limit us this week, they'd probably just keep us nested in the 80s and 90s. And like the neutral zone, which is between 03, 08, 10. 10 and 12 is a big overhead. Is today's session going to determine if we get those 6520s for the week? You guys think? Yeah, I agree. It's been a really good week. What do you guys think? Is today's session going to determine if we get that? They really did a great job resetting odds right here and holding 7-8. Yes. Okay, what's the minimum area we'd have to pin to give us an odd of 65-20 still this week? Do not get this wrong. If you guys get this wrong, I'm going to be pissed because we just talked about it for an hour. What would be the minimum area you'd have to pin to try getting those ranges this week? Yeah, probably close to this area here, which is what we ideally wanted yesterday, and they couldn't quite get that. That would be ideal. It's not that pinning around 8-8 and 8-9 is bad. It's not bad. That's still a decent spot, and it's right off weekly ranges. But this area does give us some odds of maybe stalling 05, 06. Do you see what I'm saying? 10, right? It's directly linked with that. Could you still get a test of the 20 spot though, off an 8-8, 8-9 pin? You might not get full range up to like 2-4, 2-8, 33. But you might get a max range to 19, 20, 21. So I would say minimum pin is 6488, 6490 area, aka 66, 68 points off weekly session open. This could net to 6521 max range. Okay, maybe write this down if you guys want. Whereas a 9697 pin could give us a little bit of a better odd. Because the problem with 8889, it's not bad, but it gives us an odd of stalling the neutral zone. Does that make sense? Because the midpoint would be around 6507, 10, 12. It kind of gives us like... Both these areas, though, don't allow us to break the zone. Does that make sense? So, like, whereas 96... between 94, 97... and this is what could give you odds of 28, 64, 6529, 6530. Do all of us keep us zone bound? So, Booth, you know how you said 9-9? I don't, like, unless they were to pin us, like, if they pin 9-9, that means we have an odd of getting out of the zone this week. Right? That would be our... The only reason I don't think that that's a probability is because I feel like they would have taken out 03, 04 yesterday. Like, had they taken out 03, 04 yesterday, we probably had better odds in this zone area here. Right now, we're trading what zone? Which zone are they trading in right now? Which zone is this? That stalls beneath 9-8, above 8-7. What zone is this? And they slightly entered the zone higher. We're in a bear zone still, right? So 9-9, obviously 9-8 is better. The 02 stall that they had, do you see how this gives us an odd of the channel? Okay, so it's not that we don't have odds of getting into the channel this week. They do, because this gives us an odd of still breaking that to 3334. Do you see this? This area here? 32, 33 point move. Even if they did the same interval that they did from downside, which was 31 points, that still can give us an odd of the channel. So it's not that we don't have that odd, we do. But they would, I feel like they would have to take out 02 today for that to be the case. Okay, so let's not completely take out the channel odds from our spots, but I feel like the condition would be that they'd have to take out this 02, 03, 04 area today for that to be a better probability. Okay, they don't necessarily have to pin there, but I think that they have to at least test it. Does that make sense? And then we can keep that odd in play. Whereas like the 10 mark, 12 mark, these give us odds of taking out the top of the channel. If they give us like a full break of 16, that would give us an odd of getting to the means. I don't think we have those odds in play, because that means that they would have to try triggering 21s. Do you see what I'm saying? These areas here, like the 2-1 area, which is the 34 point break from this range here. Are you guys listening? From those weekly highs. This is also linked with our 5-5 annual range. That's also 6,500 SPX. Do we have odds of doing that this week? This is off the quarterly report. Do we have odds of doing that this week? I don't think so, right? But we had some decent odds for August 22nd. No, I don't think so, guys. I don't think so. I think we have maybe odds of the 20s in the channel. Maybe they keep us nested in the channel. I'm not really sure that they'll get us to the 65, 50s, and 60s this week, because they reduce the range by taking us back to the means. I would say that they have much better odds for our 26 flip, right? 25, 22nd. keeps odds in play for next week, for month end, is the 65, 60s, and 50s a huge area for the market in general? Yes, right? So that's why they could also delay. Yeah, well, I think to get the 50s, they'd have to get to 2-1 probably tonight. Like, right? That's a lot of range. So that's why I don't think that that's possible. But them getting to like 02, 03, 05, 07 is going to give us a good odd for next week to get to 65, 50s, 60s. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? And this frame here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seventh expansion bar. This flips on the 22nd. This final day on this is the 21st. So it would be nice if they could hit those ranges within this period here. Like, I feel like this would be good for next week. The US doesn't have any holidays in August, right? I don't think we do. So we have full trading days. So yeah, I feel like next week would make sense. Do you guys honestly think some people even thought that we'd get to 6,500 this week? Let's be real. There's a bunch of you that said even last week that your friends were telling you you're on the wrong side when you went long of 6250s, right? So like this range that we had here and this continuation is insane. 1, 2, 3, exhaustion. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tomorrow is a huge day. Okay? Tomorrow is a huge day. The market put us at an advantage as early as August 1st because they gave us more. They held 66, 64 points in range right here, especially off open close. Do you see this? This was insane. And they even gave us an extra 34 points in range. Okay? Do you see this? An extra 44 points in range. Like they gave us an extra interval. That's insane. You don't usually get that. Do you see how this really offset? And we needed that because the holds up here, you have to get to here. That's 100. That's 128 points. Okay? They needed that pressure. So we got really, really lucky with this kind of range that we got on the 4th. That's what really helped market save range. Because I would say that if they reduced us by that 30, 40 odd points, whatever it was, and I think we already talked about that reduction scenario. Okay, let's just go with 44 points because it's easier. Okay, let's say they didn't give us this. Which, again, this is the last time I'll share this, but weekly targets. Okay. This is what gave us that odd. Do you think it's a coincidence that they pin these areas here, back here? Definitely not. Okay. So obviously 7-8 would have been best back here on the 7th reset, 6th reset. These were the midpoints between the 12th and 13th, right? Do you see how they saved the range on the 7th? Like, this is crazy. It's kind of the same how they saved the range today, because this could keep us intact for the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 26th. Do you see what I mean? This is probably the 88 points in range. Let's just go with 88 here. Okay. I actually haven't done this yet. I just want to see if this makes sense, because I would imagine it does. Yeah, it does. Do you see this? If they didn't bless us with that range, okay, the offset of like 34 to 40 points, do you see how they could have kept us stuck in the means? Do you guys see how that would have been the probability? Look at this. They would have kept us stuck between 6.4, 5.2, 5.7, 6.4, 6.6. Do you see how this gave us the odd to basically extend range? And that's probably why they're stalling around here right now. Do you see this? Look. That's exactly 6502. Isn't that crazy? That's the offset from this. That's nuts. And I think we said it was around 46.5 points or something like that, which is the same range that they've been working with for the last like 2 weeks. Even this range here was around 34 points. From high range, I think we hit around 40 points, 44 points exactly right here. Do you see that? On the exhaustion stick? That's crazy. So breaking this kind of range in here, if they break 6502, do you guys see how they could get us to basically the next zone, our 6600 target? 6600's in play. We already talked about that, but it's definitely in play. Because they're meeting these conditions this week. How important do you guys think it is that they try breaking 02? I would have preferred that they did it yesterday, to be honest, on the 13th, but it's okay. I feel like they kind of ranged closer to where they actually closed, which was the 6971 areas. Okay, like right here. Because if we do exact measurements here, let's just do exact just to see. This is off 5.7. This is basically the 44-point break off 5.7. This right here. Do you see this? Was 5.775 ideal that day? Was 5.775 ideal this day on the 28th in terms of range? And let me delete these so you guys can see this a little bit better. What did we prefer? Let's see how good your memories are. We wanted 5.8, 5.875. Okay, that was the exact metric of 22 points. Okay, are you guys listening? I know, but you guys have to at least get this. It's really annoying if you guys don't get this aspect of this. Do you see what they did here? Let me just delete all of this so you can see this. Do you see what they did? They basically, because they didn't meet that 5... I know you guys hate exact ratios, but sometimes we need to work with exact ratios. I'm sorry. Because they didn't meet our conditions that day on the 28th, those exact ranges of 5.8, 5.875, because that would have been the 22-point break. Do you see how even though 02 is not ideal, do you see how this offset that 0.75 by this break being 44.75? Do you guys see that? So this is helping defeat those offsets here, because this means that this is breaking off of 5.8.5, 5.8, 5.875. Does that make sense? So all they actually would have had to have broken was 6502.50. Whereas if they break off our 5.9, 5.8, I think 5.975 or something like that. Do you see how that's the 04, 03? Do you see this? So these are really, really good structure breaks here. And that's all that's required for us to potentially get to that next zone. This would be exactly 88 points from here. Exactly 88 points from this 02, it takes us to 65.89, by the way. Whereas this range in here is what could get us that 12, 13, 10. Really nice break here of 9.394. They're doing exactly what I figured they would do into the close here. Keep this. So hopefully we get some good pins, guys. This is looking pretty decent. This is 350. So let's see. 350 is going to help us determine the odds here. We're going to watch 355, 354. hope this helped you guys. Where do you guys think they're going to pin the close? Pin the close. $9,450. $9,550 is this area here is, I'm pretty sure, the 17 points from this 7-8 low. Yeah, it is. So they haven't taken out 9.5, 9.6, 9.7 yet. I figured if they stalled here, they'd probably wait till end of day. We have a lot more odds after the real-time close too, by the way. So it doesn't mean that they can't meet these areas for the session. They just have limited odds of meeting them in real time, right? What were we looking to try testing in real time? Do you see how we're now in the pinnable box for the last half hour? What's our pinnable box range for the last half hour? And you can see it. Look at where they held. 330. Look at this last half hour. This is not a coincidence. Look at where they brought it to the last half. Right off 8.8 and then right down 9.4, 9.5. Because they know that these are the areas that they have to close this. How smart is the market? I still think that they test 9.6. I could be wrong, but to me it feels like they're going to do that and then maybe retest the 0.2 area, maybe in the after session. We don't need to, but it would be ideal to give us those odds for tomorrow. And I figured if they hold the line here at 50, which they did, off that 90 spot, kind of hard to see, but do you guys see how they held? Off 350, they held this 66-point break. Do you see this? This is helping our odds. 5.3, 5.4 would be the earliest retest of this. I still think that they're going to give us that test of 9.7 here. Some of you guys doubted me earlier. Condition's going to be this 5.4. Yeah, of course the government would have a stake in Intel. Didn't they build all that intelligence in Israel? And invest like billions? Okay, this is what do you guys think? So I think if they can take out 9.450, 9.5 off the 5.4, 5.6 sticks, maybe we have an odd of retesting this into the close. This could actually end up being a very nice end of day SPX trade actually, right here. This technically is enough to stall, but the thing is all you need to do is break 9.7 to get these retests. So it's not much, but that's also another reason why they might stall it. 5.4, 5.5 will definitely determine this. Let's see. So for 5.4 stalling, usually 30-second turnaround is the point that we'd know here. We didn't really have high odds for real time though. In terms of breaking 9.7, the odds were a little bit higher for after the bell if they wanted to keep this pinnable between 8.8 and 9.6 basically. So I think the breaking spot is closer to like 9.725, 9.675. Look at that 30-second turnaround. Do you see that? 6.49475 being taken out here at 54, giving really high odds for 355. I'm hitting my targets on the real-time session here. Let's see, they're doing this into the close. How many think that they're going to get this? Quickly, quickly, quickly. You guys think that they'll give us 6.497 break in real time? 64.96 being tested here at 355. That's exact time and price for ES. 6496 test here, guys, at 55. This is setting up really nicely for the last few minutes of the day. The only trigger you need is actually 97. If they stall here, then this is where they'd keep it pinnable. 9575. That's the 17 points, guys. 9550 is 17 points. That's a 17-point close on that bar at 55. Nice. That was a really good candle. Directly to 962. That's nuts. The thing is like, they know that 97 could cause some crazy triggers, so they might play this area kind of strategically. Does that make sense? Between here. Because, like, all they have to do is break here to get here. So they might keep it a little bit stuck and start reducing range there. It's a very calculated way of trading this close. Don't you guys feel so smart? Because we know exactly what's going to happen at the exact points in time. Like, thumb stall, if they took out 9.6 at 5.5, that stick would have broke up. And they're definitely reducing the range here a little bit because they know that they have to try pinning this. We also have higher odds for after the bell. Like, this would have immediately taken out 9.9, 9.8. Do you see this? That reduction stick at 5.6? That would have been a 9.875 break right here. I still think that they'll test 9.7 in real time, but we'll see. And then give us some crazy... We had a flip at 4.03 too, so that could also suffice the after hour move at like 01, 02. Does that make sense? Kind of like that window is right after the close. Really good negation stick here at 57. Let's see... They can bring this back over, I think 9.550 is the point. So I would say that if this 58 stick, you guys think I'm going to hit my max target for the real-time session? If they pinned us at 9.899, that would be insane. That would be nice. I don't know if they'll give us that. They might test it, but... I thought that they could stall this area here. This is what I was targeting for end of day. How many think that I'm gonna get that? We'll see. They might stall 9.6 in real time purposely to not cause some mass volatility into the close. There's also a lot of inside bars that don't open up again until after 4 o'clock. So that's part of the issue here. So it's almost like they know that 9.6 would be a 17-point interval break, and 9.7 triggers mass moves on the upside, which is why they could slightly limit right here until the close. I just wanted to test 9.775 here. Let's see. 9.575 being tested here. If they pin us at exactly 9.6, 9.675, 9.725, you guys owe me something. I don't know what you guys owe me, but you owe me something. None of you guys voted on that? Not a single vote? How many think that they're going to trigger 9.7 here on this final stick? Odds were super high that they would do it after the bell. Like maybe closer to here. And probably try keeping this pinnable between 8.8 and 9.6. Let's see, 10 seconds to go. I would prefer that they at least pin over 90.5. I figured that they'll probably pin closer to these ranges here if they don't take out 9.6. That's the exact range from open. 648875 real-time close. That was the minimum. And this is off the 9.6 stall. It's a big reject because it's also the same range you would have got on the upside. Does that make sense? Like if they had cleared. They also stalled that 9.550. I don't know if you noticed this here. That's the 17-point stall right here at 5.8. And I said that they had to clear that before 5.9, which they didn't. They stalled 49525, which means they could probably take that down. And this is because they had odds of this. This would have been like that 07 trigger. Do you see that in that reduction? Market knows that if it closed just a bit higher here and went just a tiny bit higher, you could have had, so you could have had a really clean upside break to 65.0607, and this range suffices that exact theory there. 64.9550 was the 17-point interval, and they stalled that just before 59. Do you see this here? This right here, this overhead here, and that's essentially what reduced the range. So let's just quickly see though, if so we know that this implied 65.07, but I do want to see what this implied, because this was so off the 50 mark. How many points is that? 7.5. I just want to see if it would have broke 02 and gave us 03. Wow, it would have. You guys, that's insane. If you really want to learn, document some of this, because reductions in range, conditions not being met, these are so important. So this stick right here, basically, had they met this little condition here, and it wasn't much, the condition was literally 649550, 6496 area, they could have gotten us that 03. Do you see that? That's pretty insane. Look at that. That's crazy. So they had an odd. They didn't quite meet that. And that made sense because we didn't really have super high odds for real time anyway. And then the overall range that they had here, if they would have cleared and broke, was about, I said that they could take this back down 12, 13 points. 12, 13 points would have probably gotten us the 65.07, 08, 09. I think we said between here and 4, and the overall reduction was 12 points. I think that would have gotten us the 07 area. Yep. Do you see this? So our targets are definitely accurate. So you just have to be able to know the conditions for them to be met. And they, even though it looks like they dumped the close, it's because they know that that's the minimum condition. So they don't technically owe us above that. Where's this? This is still enough to keep it in play. Does that make sense? Off these weekly ranges. And that's the exact close. Isn't that nuts? They know that. They don't owe us above 8875. So we had a 66-point close from weekly session open. And a 9.6 stall, because they know that breaking 9.6 would have triggered a mass move to 65.03, 65.07, and that's exactly what was calculated there. So it's still good to watch these ranges within this session though, because it can give you an idea. So now we know that 65.07, 03 would have definitely been in play, but it's still good to see the overall range because it could still give us some insight on if they come back and take out 03, 07, you know, what kind of overheads would we have? And we already know that 65.10 is an overhead, so, and it makes sense because look, this is 65.0975 off the 9.7 spot. Do you see this? 10.50. So I can say with confidence that these would still be a big overhead for the week. A reminder that the 64.8875 spot, which is that 66-point interval off weekly open, can still give us the retest of 0506. Okay, so it still can keep those odds in play. It can still give us a test of 10. Do you see what I'm saying? Because these intervals here, and again, this range reduction here equates to being the same. This 13.5-point reduction is likely going to be this exact spot here, which is off 9.697. Do you see what I'm saying? Off 9.7, it's like right here. Do you see the confluence? This is the 22-point break. This is the reduction in range. This is what could still be applicable. And this is so you guys understand why these areas are still super strong for the week. 07, 08. Could this area still potentially give us the 20s pinning here? Yes, it can, but it could make it a big wall, correct? So there's potentially a wall here between 20, 23, but there's still an odd that they can enter the bull zone here. Okay. And the only way you could hit like a extended range is if you broke here, but that would still limit us to the top of the zone. So I would say that that kind of close limits us of getting entries into the channel this week. Do you guys agree? Whereas over here would have given us some odds of the channel. So, and you could use the same exact theory for downside, like, okay, so overnight you'd probably, to achieve these areas, do you understand what I'm saying? You probably want to try holding off of here. Okay, let's put this back to 30. Okay, you probably want to try holding off. Do you see what I'm saying? This area here. Probably want to test at least around here. 9.8. Okay, retract around here. Does that make sense? Because if you fail to get back in this range here, guess what? You're going to retest the lows. Okay, and I would imagine that a 44-point break, since that stalls you from getting into the channel, it would probably do the same thing here. It would basically give you a slight probability of entering the channel here. Do you see that? So this would be the implied downside risk if they fail to sustain these areas overnight. This could give you a reset and a test of here, which is right back to your 5.3. Do you see that? Let me know if this makes sense. This is supposed so that you guys have an idea of like support and upside, and it should align exactly with these spots here. Okay, the 6.6 would probably be now a very big spot. Ideally, you probably want to hold the 7.8 area, but if they decide to limit range, they'll probably do something like that where they would reverse it. But I think to hit closer to the 20s or to keep the odd in play, you probably do want to hold around the 70 range, which is this area in here. Okay? And it seems like they're limiting range to maybe this range here, which would mean that you'd probably need a pretty tight hold around here, like around the 7.9 spot. So write out the weekly plan based on this. What's your overnight plan now based on this? Write it out for me so I know what the weekly plan is. End of night overnight plan. Keep me posted on what that is. Well, yeah, you definitely want to avoid the channel, but that's... What's the overnight plan to keep structure in play? Okay, so this would be a 12-point break. 17 points here. So you can see how 7.1 is definitely going to be a huge spot. They stalled 15 points, I think we said, so it seems like there could be confluence around 7.5, 7.4. I'm giving you guys a head start on the plan. I'm not writing overnight conditions tonight. You guys are going to write them. Give me overnight conditions in the Discord, please. Based on what we just discussed, give me an area that we have to sustain, ideally, minimum, max. Give me upside test where we need to test by what point in time, and where we have to clear by real-time open, and what that would imply for max range. Give me both a bearish and a bullish scenario. Okay, I just gave you guys a head start, so no, write it out in full detail. We don't have to sustain 8.5. That's a little bit high. I just gave you guys the answers in here. They're literally right in front of you. But try to go back and rewrite that. All right, obviously holding 8.1, 8.2 is going to be best case since they held here, 7.8, 7.9 here. But technically we have some room for downside if they were to come back and retest here. You definitely need to try getting some upside tests first. I think that would help offset volatility. And if they give us a better session close, like maybe closer to here, then it'll help increase these ranges here. So good luck with setting those. Set some conditions, guys, for overnight based on this real-time close here. You don't have to write it in here, just put it in the Discord. Well, I'd say upper zone tests are probably the most ideal, above 7.9, closer to 8.1, 8.2. We probably have some range to work with though, down to 7.7, 7.8, 7.3. But that would only be the case if you fail to break this 9.7 wall. So, all right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy.